Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of the 2011 comic book action drama prequel spin-off X-Men First Class. Now, X-Men First Class is a movie that I reviewed and ranted on a long time ago. I think around 2011 when the film came out. And honestly, after watching this again directly after Origins, I didn't hate the film this time around. Now, I still am not a fan of this movie, but there were a lot more things that I appreciated and respected about this film that I did not previously. Now, X-Men First Class was released on June 3rd of 2011. It actually did fairly well in the box office, if I remember correctly. It was one of those films that I think cost a little bit over $100 million and then ended up making a decent amount of a profit. Now, it wasn't like a ginormous hit, but it was enough of a hit for Fox to consider it a success. Now, this is a film that had a really long and storied development process. It originally started out as a X-Men Origins type of prequel with Magneto, and then it turned into what the film ultimately ended up being. Now, the film was directed by Matthew Vaughn, who was originally going to direct The Last Stand, but then he had to leave due to personal issues, family issues in his life. And so it was kind of a way for him to take care of unfinished business, so to speak. And he was definitely one of the best things about the film. That features a screenplay by Ashley Edward Miller, Zach Stens, Jane Goldman, and Matthew Vaughn. The script is the main failing for this film for me, and I'll talk more in depth about it later in this review. But yeah, that's a problem. It stars James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, Kevin Bacon. James McAvoy plays a young Professor X. Michael Fassbender plays a young Eric Lensher Magneto. You have Kevin Bacon who plays a new villain, uh, Sebastian Shaw from the Hellfire Club. Jennifer Lawrence plays Mystique. I don't know why Mystique is here, but all right. Yeah, that's one issue I have with the film is I don't really know why Mystique is here and why she's like Xavier's half sister or some shit. Rose Byrne is also in this as Moira McTaggart. You have January Jones who plays Emma Frost. Oliver Platt has a brief little cameo role as a FBI CIA agent guy. Um, now, speaking of cameo roles, you also have some cameo roles by actors such as Michael Ironside and James Remar. Nicholas Hoult plays Beast. You have Caleb Landry Jones who plays Banshee. Lucas Till plays Havoc. Jason Flemyng plays. I think it's the name is escaping me right now, but he's essentially he's Nightcrawler's dad. Edi Gathegi plays a character named Darwin. Zoe Kravitz plays Angel Salvadore, and Alex Gonzalez plays Riptide. Now, it also features a score by Henry Jackman, which I thought was a real strong suit. I thought it was a great score, especially the Magneto music. Cinematography by John Mathieson, and features editing by Lee Smith and Eddie Hamilton. Now, the production process, like I said, was pretty long and storied. During the production of X2, producer Lauren Schuler Donner had discussed the idea of a film focusing on the young X-Men with the crew, which was met with approval. The concept was revived during production of X-Men: The Last Stand. One of The Last Stand's writers, Zach Penn, was hired to write and direct this spin-off, but this idea later fell through. Penn explained in 2007 that the original idea was to have me do a Young X-Men spin-off of the Young X-Men characters, probably similar to the cartoon series X-Men Evolution. But something came up with a pretty interesting idea. Someone came up with a pretty interesting idea. It was this guy who worked with me named Mike Chamoy. He worked a lot with me on X3. He came up with how to do a Young X-Men movie, which is not what you'd expect, which apparently was inspired by Batman Begins. I would have just preferred to have just done a Young X-Men movie just based on the original crew, the original X-team of Jean Grey, Iceman, Angel, and Cyclops. And Beast. Beast is the other one. and of course Professor X. Now, around the same time in December 2004, 20th Century Fox hired screenwriter Sheldon Turner to draft a spin-off X-Men film, and he chose to write X-Men Origins Magneto, pitching it as The Pianist Meets X-Men. According to Turner, the script he penned was set from 1939 to 1955, following Magneto trying to survive in Auschwitz. He meets Xavier, a young soldier, during the liberation of the camp. He hunts down the Nazi war criminals who tortured him, and this lust for vengeance turns him and Xavier into enemies. In April of 2007, David S. Goyer was hired to direct the film. Ugh, David S. Goyer? Really? The guy who directed the Unborn? Not a good choice. The film would take place mostly in flashbacks with the actors in their 20s, with Ian McKellen's older Magneto as a framing device, and some usage of computer-generated facelift applied to him in the prologue of X-Men The Last Stand. Yeah, the awful facelift. Yeah, more of that. No thank you. McKellen reiterated his hope to open and close the film. The Magneto film was planned to shoot in Australia for a 2009 release date, but it was delayed by the 2007-2008 Writers Guild of America strike. And that was kind of pretty much what happened. Now, they did try to bring it back again, but eventually the film was canned. As producer Simon Kinberg read the comic series X-Men First Class, he suggested 20th Century Fox to adapt it. And Kinberg, however, did not want to follow the comic too much, as he felt it was not fresh enough in terms of storytelling, considering them too similar to Twilight and the John Hughes movies, and also because the producers wanted an adaptation that would introduce new characters. That's a mistake. We do not need to introduce new characters, especially in a prequel. Why? Why? This isn't necessary. That's one of the problems I have with this film, is that we have new characters that have no business being here. Banshee didn't even show up in X-Men comics until the 70s or 80s. Havoc is Cyclops' younger brother, but for some reason he's a part of the X-team before Cyclops. Mystique, I don't remember ever being a part of the X-Men at any point in time in this era, but we have her here. And then we have lame rejects. It's the first class of rejects. Instead of having the actual team, we'll just have a bunch of rejects. We have Beast and Magneto, but we should have Beast. Sure, I'm fine with Beast. He's from the original run. He's from the original team. But all this other stuff, no thank you. It's unnecessary. I did not want new characters. It's too similar to the John Hughes films. Oh, so it's fun? Something this movie needed a lot more of? Needed to be a lot more of is fun? Not take itself so damn serious? Like it's some kind of drama? Which I understand. Alright, there were some effective sequences. But at the same time, it's a boring film. It's a pretty boring movie because of this. So, Kinberg and Schuler-Donner said they wanted the characters with visuals and powers that had not been seen and worked well as an ensemble, even if they did not work together in the comics. No! Why? Why we don't need... Why did you... Why? Why do you want a team that's never worked together in the comics to be in this film? I mean, they didn't really have much of a dynamic or a chemistry together, the people that you chose. Mystique does nothing. She just does one thing where she impersonates Kevin Bacon so Beast can knock out the Red Devil guy, and that's it. That's it. That's all. Azazel, that's his name. So she can knock out Azazel. So Beast can knock out Azazel, that's it. She doesn't do anything else. She doesn't do any martial arts. She doesn't show any of the stuff that Rebecca Romain as Mystique showed in the previous films. So they wanted it that way. Schuler-Donner later said the original idea was to greenlight First Class, depending on the success of X-Men Origins Magneto. The project was seeking approval to film in Washington, D.C., and by December 2008, Goyer said filming would begin if X-Men Origins Wolverine was successful. The story moved forward in 1962 and involves Xavier and Magneto battling a villain. In 2008, Josh Schwartz was hired to write the screenplay while declining the possibility of directing X-Men First Class. Fox later approached Bryan Singer, the director of X-Men and X2, in October of 2009. Schwartz later said that Singer dismissed his work as he wanted to make a very different kind of movie, with the director instead of writing his own treatment, which was then developed into a new script by Jamie Moss. In 2009, Ian McKellen confirmed that he would not be reprising his role as Magneto in the Origins movie, citing his age, and Schuler Donner stated the movie might never be made, stating it as at the back of the queue in the studio's priorities. Both Donner and Bryan Singer have stated that Magneto would not be produced as the plot of X-Men First Class superseded the story of the planned film. Singer denied using Sheldon Turner's script for Magneto as inspiration in the writer's draft of First Class, but the Writers Guild of America arbitration still credited Turner for the film's story, while Moss and Schwartz's collaborations ended up uncredited. Singer set the film to a period where Xavier and Magneto were in their 20s, and seeing that it was during the 1960s, he added the Cuban Missile Crisis as a backdrop, considering it would be interesting to discuss a contemporary concept in historical context. Schuler Donner suggested the Hellfire Club as the villains. So, in a lot of ways, I have Singer to blame for this boring-ass, really lame conflict of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Thanks, Brian, but no thanks. In addition to Moss, Ashley Edward Miller and Zach Stentz were hired to rewrite the script. Miller compared it tonally to Singer's work on the first two X-Men films. The pair centered the film on Xavier and Magneto's relationship, and wrote the other characters and storylines in terms of how they fit in the tension between Eric and Charles. Singer dropped out of the director's position in March 2010 due to his commitment to the Jack the Giant Killer adaptation, which honestly was a pretty awful film. He formalized his duties from director to producer of the film. The producers listed various possible directors, but at first did not consider Matthew Vaughn because he started working on The Last Stand before backing out. After seeing Vaughn's satirical superhero film Kick-Ass, Kinberg decided to contact Vaughn to see if he would be interested in First Class. When Fox offered Vaughn the chance to reboot X-Men and put your stamp all over it, he first thought the studio was joking, but he accepted after discovering that it was to be set in the 1960s. So apparently the X-Men Origins Magneto thing never happened, even though X-Men Origins Wolverine actually did make a fair amount of money, so it was successful, but it wasn't as critically successful as Fox might have liked, so they decided to go into the direction of a prequel, which I think is interesting. The concept of First Class is one of the pros. I like the idea. I like the idea of this. I just wish they injected a little bit more fun into the film. The whole scene where the team of rejects is just hanging out at the CIA headquarters and having fun. That was fun. But then you have this whole thing where no more fun, and then that's the problem. I mean, there's just too much seriousness. They needed to lighten up. I really would have loved to have seen the film in the tone of Kingsman: The Secret Service, with the original team of X-Men. Not with the R rating, it doesn't need that, but just with the original team of X-Men, of Iceman, Beast, Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Angel, and Professor X. But honestly, like I said, after seeing this film again, this film has quite a few pros. It surprised me by how many pros this film had. The direction by Matthew Vaughn, it's sleek, it's stylish, it's actually really good. I thought it was great. I thought his direction was great. He really definitely had a passion for this project, and it shows. I just wish he had a better script to work with. The editing, I also thought, was a standout, especially in these scenes where Xavier is training the new recruits. They have this sort of comic book panel editing that I really liked. I wish they actually used more of that in the movie, because the fact that it only shows up in those scenes, it kind of makes it seem a bit off, which is why I honestly would have preferred if they used that more often for transitions and things like that. The editing by Lee Smith and Eddie Hamilton. The cinematography by John Matheson really does bring out the era really well, especially scenes where the use of lighting is really well done. The costume design is another thing I really thought was a standout that this film did a really good job with. The production design, the art direction, the costumes, the makeup. They did a great job making things look like, okay, it's a 60s film. It really did a great job bringing the 60s to life for this movie. The makeup, especially on Beast, his hairy form, and Mystique was really well done, was great, was fantastic. The acting by pretty much everyone in the cast. James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, I really liked them this time around. I thought their performances were phenomenal. I thought they worked well off each other. I thought they were perfectly cast as a young Charles Xavier and young Eric Lensher, young Magneto. Um, Jennifer Lawrence, I could take or leave her though, but her character wasn't written very well. And honestly, Mystique didn't even need to be in this film. She should have just played a young Jean, to be honest. Matthew Vaughn, like I said, he did a good job directing the film, but did a good job working with the actors as well. Kevin Bacon, actually, I liked more this time around. I didn't think it was a great villain or anything, or was fantastic, or particularly memorable, but performance-wise, Kevin Bacon was fine. Rose Byrne, I liked as Moira McTaggart, the human of the X-Men, the human of the X-Team. I always liked her. I always like her anyway as an actress. Landry Jones as Emma Frost is a miss. She can't act. So she's just a pretty face. That's all she is. Oliver Platt was fun in the little bit that he had. Nicholas Hoult, I thought, did a good job as Beast. I don't think he needed to become the furry Beast, but so early. But that's just my personal opinion. But he was fine. Caleb Landry Jones, I wasn't a really big fan of as Banshee. Lucas Till, I hated as Havoc. He came from the John Cena School of Acting, which is not a place you want to go to learn how to act. Jason Flemyng was all right. He was there as Zazel. Edi Gathegi I liked a lot as Darwin, but he was the first one to die, which sucked. Zoe Kravitz as Angel Salvadore can spin on herself, and Alex Gonzalez wasn't anything as Riptide. So I mean, the acting by most of the main cast is really good, but the other stuff, eh. The concept, like I said, I liked it. I liked the idea of this prequel. That's why they should have just rebooted it. That's what this kind of was anyway. It was a reboot, but not really. And that's what they should have they should have just went all the way with it. Just 100% reboots. I don't think anybody would have complained after The Last Stand and X-Men Origins. The bits of action, there were some bits of action I liked in the movie. Anything with Fassbender using his magnetic powers, grabbing guns out of people's hands, tying people up in the barbed wire, the scene where he lifts the anchor up and wraps it around a boat. I really liked the stuff with Fassbender going around on getting his revenge. I thought the quest for revenge, his out for blood aspect of the film, I thought was really interesting. And honestly, I personally feel it wasn't done justice. It wasn't done enough justice. It really should have had its own film. Um, and the visual effects, for the most part, I thought were fairly impressive for the budget and for the time, uh, especially stuff that dealt with the mutant powers. Except for Emma Frost, her diamond effects look pretty bad. Honestly, I thought the diamond effects in X-Men Origins looked better than the ones here. But I mean, the stuff with the Blackbird and so on, that was well done. And I really liked the score. Like I said, I love Magneto's theme, and I thought the score was definitely one of the many things about the film that I actually liked this time around. But now we get to the cons, which honestly are what brings the film down. It brings the film crumbling down. The film has a lot of great things on top of this foundation, but the foundation isn't strong enough. So eventually the movie just falls apart. And for me personally, it's the script and the story that's the main problem. It's very dialogue heavy. It's very character driven. And that's fine if these characters are interesting. The dynamic between Charles and Mystique is completely uninteresting. It's boring. They don't have any chemistry with one another. Mystique just shows up randomly when she's a kid at Xavier's mansion when he was also a child, and there's really not much build-up or explanation for it. She just shows up, and then they become friends. It's just like, I don't really get it. Why is Mystique here? And it just seems kind of rushed to put Mystique in here. Um, Also, I don't really. I mean, the stuff with Charles and Magneto is great. The stuff with Xavier and Magneto is really well done. I like their dynamic with one another. I just wish there was more of that because the movie is trying to have its cake and eat it too. So it's trying to tell Xavier and Magneto's story, or Magneto's origin story. At the same time, it's also trying to tell the story of the creation of this first team of X-Men. And it doesn't do either of these stories justice because it doesn't have enough time. It doesn't have enough running time, and it honestly just, it's a very fractured film. The story is very fractured because of this. You have the stuff with Magneto, which I like, which is fun. I enjoy it, but it's only a little bit of the film. Then you have the stuff with the building the X-Men, which it has its moments. But then you have the conflict, which is the Cuban Missile Crisis, which I personally thought was boring. And you have an anticlimax, a climax that's really anticlimactic. All it is Magneto lifts a submarine out of the water, stops some missiles, turns them around. Xavier tries to stop him. Xavier ends up getting a bullet in the back, which I honestly thought was a better origin for Xavier getting paralyzed than the one in the comics. So I gotta give the film some props for that. And there's little bits of action with the other team members fighting the other evil mutants, but it's really not that much. So the climax is pretty lame. The conflict is lame. And so that was a problem, and it hurt the pacing. The script and the story was weak, so it hurt the pacing of the film. After the hour mark, the movie really got tedious for me. It was really hard to watch because of this Cuban Missile Crisis shit, and we're going back and forth with the Russians and the Americans and all this crap. If I want to see that, I'll watch Doctor Strangelove, or I'll watch some other movie like Failsafe. I don't want to see that in an X-Men film. So that was pretty boring and lackluster. And then the film definitely did need more action. It doesn't have a lot of action. You have the stuff with Magneto, using his powers, and you have a few little things here and there. I mean, the scene where Sebastian Shaw comes in and he tries to kidnap and take the other mutants from the CIA facility. The mutants don't do anything. They just stand there and don't cry and cower in a corner. The teenage mutants don't do shit. Darwin's the one who tries to do something, and he's the first one to die. And that's another problem with the script, is it's honestly kind of racist in this scene. I mean, is its head so far up its ass it doesn't realize it's being racist here? Because Darwin is played by Edi Gathegi, who's a black man. And so there's a scene where Sebastian Shaw is talking about how the human race is going to be enslaved, and the camera points directly to Darwin, the black man, when the words enslaved are said. Like, that's not very subtle at all. That's pretty racist, actually. And he's the first one to die, and he's supposed to have the power to adapt to everything. He's supposed to be technically immortal, and that doesn't happen because he's the first one to die. And the other problems I had is just with the script is these characters. Banshee fucking yells really loudly. He can yell and yell. He can scream and yell himself out of the movie. Why is Banshee here? Especially with Moira. Why is Moira here and then Banshee's here as a teen? That just doesn't make any sense. And Banshee was never really a cool character anyway. He was fine as like a little side character. But really, Banshee... Havoc and his hula hoop rings of death. He can go spin him around himself and burn himself to a crisp for all the fucking care, because Lucas Till had all the personality and charisma of a fucking rock or a piece of hardened lava, a pumice stone, but a basalt. Yeah, that's really what he was. He was just basalt. He was a rock-hard piece of basalt in terms of his acting and his performance. The other mutants, Angel Salvadore, like you have Angel, but it's not really, because she has fairy wings and she spits like fireballs or some shit on people. They look like the hot hail that was in Flash Gordon, the 1980 film. She's nothing. The other mutants are nothing. Magneto is honestly, and Shaw are the only somewhat intimidating and good villains. Everyone else sucks. Then you have this stuff with Beast, where he's, my feet are too big, so, I'm a monster, even though you could hide that fairly well. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal had feet that were bigger than yours, and he He didn't want to take no serum to make it so he wasn't a freak. So my feet are big. Like, unlike the Beast in the comic, hey, your hands are normal size. His feet are big. They look like monkey feet, but he can hide them fairly well. But no, the script has to throw in this cliched bullshit. Oh, I'm a monster, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde dynamic, which is even name dropped in a line of dialogue. Professor X is talking to Nicholas Hoult, and he's talking about Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. You need to be Jekyll. You control the beast. And I'm just like, ugh. So it's foreshadowing. He injects himself with this cure, and it turns him into the blue-furred beast, which is a good effect, but it's too early. And honestly, the reason why he becomes the beast in this is stupid. So that's definitely a problem I have with the script. That's dumb. That's absolutely retarded, if you ask me. That's stupid. It's moronic. It's beyond inane. And so, yeah, you have these first class of rejects. As soon as they show up, the film really starts to fall apart for me. Because I don't give a shit about these rejects. Where's Jean Grey? Where's Iceman? Where's Angel? You have Beast, but where's everybody else? Where the fuck is Cyclops? Why is Havoc here? So, honestly, the more I think about the film, yes, there are things that I like about it more than I did in the past. And originally, I was thinking about maybe giving this higher marks than The Last Stand. But the more I think about it, I mean, there are those things that I like about the movie, but it isn't enough for me to say that it's better than The Last Stand. I'd say, okay, it's on par with The Last Stand. It's disappointing because, once again, it has some good concepts. It's trying to tell two stories at once and doesn't do either of them justice. It has problems that I think are honestly crippling that ultimately bring the film down. But both movies have their merits, but both movies also have their problems and issues and cons that ultimately outweigh the pros for me and make the movie fail. Now, it isn't an epic fail. It isn't the worst film ever. It isn't a movie that I was like, oh man, like, I hate it. I don't hate it anymore. I just find it disappointing and a misfire, like X-Men The Last Stand. So, I mean, but there are some cool things. I like Michael Fassbender. I like James McAvoy. I liked the score, the direction, the art, the art direction, the costume design, the makeup effects when they are there, little bits of the visual effects here and there, the little bits of action with Magneto. But honestly, I just wanted to see a Magneto revenge film, just with Michael Fassbender going around hunting down the people who tormented him, or a film that is just about the creation of the first team of X-Men. Not both. And a better conflict than the Cuban Missile Crisis. And a better plan for Shaw than this stupid, I'm gonna nuke everybody. Because mutants, I'm like, do you understand that only works if you have healing powers? If you have a healing factor like Wolverine? Because if you don't have any of that, then you're gonna die. And Shaw would be fine because he can absorb energy, and that's why he's so young. But at the same time, it's like, what about all these other mutants? You're talking about, oh, the mutants will rise up. I'm like, no, they won't. They'll be dead. They'll be incinerated by the nuclear blast. What are you talking about? Your plan sucks. And it's also a copy. It's a retread. It's a Xerox of Magneto's plan from the first X-Men movie. But Magneto knew better and realized, I'm going to create something that doesn't harm the other mutants. Your plan harms the other mutants. Not a good plan. Not a good plan at all. And then of course the climax of the fucking submarine, and Magneto throws a quarter into Shaw's head, which was ridiculous. That was all kinds of ridiculous and silly. And Shaw has Magneto's helmet. He created Magneto's helmet. That was an unnecessary origin. But it was pretty cool to see Michael Fassbender in the actual comic book Magneto colors and the helmet at the end of the movie. But there's nothing done with that, though. You don't see that again. But that was still pretty cool, though. So, I mean, yeah, there were cool things. There's stuff about it that I could see myself watching again, but there's not enough. And it's just overall a film that just, at the end of the day, I'm not a fan of. So maybe it is like a review and a rant, because the more I think about it, the more it's disappointing, the more it's boring, and and the stuff with the Rejects crew I don't give a shit about, and it's just frustrating because you have this prequel story, and I think it'd be cool, but you mess it up, and then have this boring Missile Crisis bullshit, and then you have these fucking First Class of Rejects, and then it's kind of a mess, to be honest. But it's a nice looking mess. But still, it's still a mess. But anyway, I don't know what else to say about X-Men First Class, except if I was going to rate it out of 5 stars, I would give the movie 2 out of 5 stars. Not the worst, but not really that good. Not really that good. Not a fan. I have no desire to add this to my collection. And yeah, Matthew Vaughn has definitely done better with comic book films like Kick-Ass and so on. But yeah, it's just at one hand it's there, but it's not there enough. There isn't nearly enough good here to really make it even an average film for me. It's not a time waster because I wouldn't want to sit down and watch this slow-paced movie. I really don't. I mean, there's certain scenes I wouldn't mind watching again, but that's really about it. There's not enough. Now, if they had more action, if they focused on one aspect of the plot only and didn't try to have 2 different plots going on at once, then maybe I would be able to get into the film more. Maybe it could be even a time waster. Maybe even it could have been a film that I liked. But as it is, not a fan, and I do honestly think it's really overrated. I think it's more than just a tad bit overrated. So anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you guys later. See ya.